Hello, I'm Robert, and this is to help people who are scared that Trump will be re-elected president in 2024, and especially scared of something like the Capitol riot happening again, and the him being elected improperly with the Stop the Steal candidate. And so just to explain why all that is just totally impossible. First of all, a minority of Republicans, but a significant minority, say that Trump no longer represents their conservative values. And the reason is quite simple. On the 6th of January, when Trump followers invaded the Capitol and threatened to execute his own vice president, he never once asked them to stop, and he never told them that this didn't represent his core values. You just need to say something like, executing my vice president doesn't represent my core values, and all those who are occupying the Capitol also don't represent my values, please leave. It wouldn't have mattered whether they left or not, they probably would have. But just saying it was wrong, and that would have been enough so that he was still supporting the Constitution. And not saying that was just a step too far for many Republicans. They are Republicans, and their conservative values include a high respect for the Constitution and democracy, and they just are not able to support a Republican candidate who doesn't have those values. So about two-thirds of Republicans would want Trump to remain a major political figure, and 44% would support him as a presidential candidate, but 32% would not support him as a political figure at all. And this is what happens to the electoral map if 10% of the Republican voters were to abstain. And that would include, for instance, voting for a breakaway party. They don't need to vote Democrat, just abstain. And if that happens, then you get only 125 Republicans in the Senate. So there's no way that, and there's 125 Republican electors, and there's just no way you can get elected because you need 270 electors to become president. So then what about Stop the Steal? It's impossible to win that way too, because the thing is, it would be first of all, let's look at what he has to achieve with Stop the Steal in that situation. And I just marked all the states amongst those ones. If it was 10% fall in the Republicans, then they would have to stop the steal on 7 different states, the 7 largest ones, in order to overturn the election and get to 270, over 270 for the Republicans. And so first of all, maybe it's possible that they could get legislators for all 7 of those states who all agree to say that the public vote doesn't represent their state, and to submit an alternative slate of electors to the Congress. Because there's a complicated system in United States politics, if you don't know it, that each state votes in some electors, and then those electors they vote for the president, and then finally the Congress then adds up all the votes that the electors have cast during their election. And that's how the president is decided. So these 7 states, and they might substitute an alternative slate of electors that weren't voted in by the popular vote, and they just say, well, we don't think the popular vote is legitimate, so this is our alternative slate. And that is actually permitted according to the laws of how the US states works, though it's never done that way. But it can be done if the US law doesn't tell states how to conduct their elections, and they could just submit their own alternative slate of electors. So in that situation, then it goes to Congress, and but then both houses in Congress have to support the alternative slate of electors, and there's no way that the Senate is going to support this, because only a third of the Senate gets re-elected every 2 years, and in the Senate, then and it's really quite a slow turnover in the Senate, and it can count on 5 Republican senators who voted to impeach Trump, to convict him in the impeachment. So those ones obviously are going to vote against it. And the 7 voted, but 5 of them, well, 2 are going to retire. The other 5, they will be there in 2026. They're either safe seats or they're not going to be elected until 2026. So they'll all be there in 2024. And then if you go to the votes in the Senate, then only 6 senators voted to overturn the Arizona results, 8 voted to overturn the results in Pennsylvania. So that means 92 will confirm Pennsylvania, and most of those will still be senators in 2024. So it's just impossible to get a majority, and you would need 50 of the Senate to vote for the Stop the Steal, to say Trump should be president. And they would need to have all 51 of them, and 51 would have to vote for him for all 7 of those states, and to flip them. And it would be likely many more than those 7. Let's assume 10%, but remember it's 32% would likely vote against him, so the swing would likely be more than 10% if Trump were to stand as candidate. It's likely Democrats would win by much more than 10%. And then there's the House. Then if Congress is split, so there's the House has more possibility of people voting for Stop the Steal, and there's a rather complicated situation if Congress was split. But the majority in the House isn't really possible either, because even in 2020 it was 282 to 238 to reject the Pennsylvania challenge, and remember that they have to get a majority to reject, and it just doesn't seem feasible that can be changed all the way so you get a majority of the Republicans, remembering that a third of the Republicans are going to be against. It really would have to be a huge landslide for the Republicans, and that's not likely. For likely a third of them to be against Stop the Steal, and then still to be a majority of the Republicans that win the House. So it's beyond incredible that they would get this, especially also considering that they would have to meet again and again and again, and for all 7 of those states, you get a majority of the House saying we are going to overturn the popular vote for each state one after another until you get to the last one, and you get a majority for them. It's beyond incredible. That's not going to happen in 2024. And then a riot can't override the results either. So if you just get if the extremists had actually executed Pence, it wouldn't have achieved anything, because just would get someone else. All Mike Pence's role is very routine at that point. All he does to read out, it's like trying to overturn the results in a state by trying to execute the people who read out the results. He would do absolutely nothing. all that happens is they'd be convicted for murder. And Mike Pence had no authority no constitutional right to change the numbers that he read out. And there was one very eccentric legal scholar called Eastman who claimed that Pence could actually decide for himself which votes to certify, but that's just not true. There's no way that would pass the Supreme Court. I mean, it's an extremely eccentric idea, and there's a lot of controversy about just saying, that he even said that. But in any case, that's highly irrelevant in 2024, since Kamala Harris would be the vice president, who would have to vote to accept all these things. So there's no way that that's going to happen either. But you don't need to worry. The rioters aren't going to get into the. This is the fence that they can now install at pretty much a moment's notice, a day's notice, in front of the Capitol, and they will surely do that in January the 6th, 2024, just to be on the safe side. And it's not unclimbable fence, and then it's got these bollards on the inside to stop any car from driving through, and then it's also got these cameras up there as well, that automatic security cameras constantly keeping an eye on the fence as well. So there's absolutely no way that rioters are going to get in 2024. So please don't worry about that. Now, I just want to be absolutely clear that the only reason Trump can't be re-elected is because January 6th and stopped this deal. If he had just done his objections all the way through to December the 20th and 2019, which is when the when you legitimately can go through the courts, then if he just stopped there and accepted the result when finally all his court cases were rejected, then he would certainly have been eligible for re-election. And when he continued after that, then he already was peeling off some of the support from Republicans, saying that's it should be settled. It's in the Constitution that if the legal cases are over, there has to be a date at which you've made the decision as to who is the president, and that is set up in law as December the 20th. So continuing beyond then, that was very controversial already. But then when it came to December the 6th, that's the point at which Liz Collins and Liz Cheney and Susan Collins and various others, then that was a step too far. They actually experienced hiding in the Capitol and people trying to kill them outside the gate, outside the doors of the rooms they were in. And having experienced that, there's no way they're going to let, and Trump not stopping that, Trump not saying a word, being able to not telling them to stop trying to kill them. And it's pretty basic that they were in the Capitol Hill, they were there legitimately as legislators. There were people knocking on the doors and banging on the doors actually where they were, trying to get in. Even one of them got shot and killed, sadly, trying to get in. There were security people defending them. They were hiding behind the benches as this was going on, and Trump didn't say a word to say that this was wrong. And this is why and remember, this then will be an ad campaign, and people like Liz Cheney and Susan Collins, with this memory still in their memory, and there will be these ads saying Trump should never get near the Capitol again, never near the White House again, and then they will say at the end, I am Liz Cheney, a Republican, and I endorse this ad, and Susan Collins would say the same, and so on for certainly all the 5 who voted to impeach him, and of the senators who voted to impeach him, they would certainly all put their name to ads like that. and likely several more. So this is the only reason. It's not Trump's policies were not the problem for the Republican support. It's only the January the 6th events. So now, I don't think we're going to see Trump standing in 2024. I think he's got more sense to stand. I mean, he can. He's pretty clued up in a certain sense, some kind of worldliness or whatever, and I can't a kind of canniness or something. I can't see him standing for it myself, but if he did, then he'd lose big time. And but what about a more moderate candidate? Again, someone with Trump's values but supporting Stop the Steal, and those people would be wouldn't be able to support that either. And whether I think still there would be a lot of Republicans who just wouldn't vote for anyone who says that they are prepared to overturn the popular vote, which is what Stop the Steal is all about. I can't see that there will be some that would appeal to some of the core base, but there would be a significant number that would be peeled off and make it very difficult for such a candidate to win. So, but the Republicans could appoint a more moderate Republican who doesn't support Stop the Steal, and however, their chance of success isn't that good, because simply because it's the second term of Biden, and it's very rare for a president not to be re-elected for a second term. Most presidents serve for 8 years. Trump was quite rare in only having 4 years, and he only lost it because over the COVID pandemic. And in my view, if he had a good plan he outlined in March, along with the CDC, and it really would have worked. But he immediately undermined it. He supported to start with, but then he immediately undermined it as soon as, I think it was Georgia, decided to open up much faster than the plan said was possible. And I think that's basically the start of the trajectory that ended up with him losing election. And then the whole thing about not wearing masks and not physically distancing, and then going against Dr. Fauci, who was very popular. I think that's how he lost the election myself. So I think for Biden to lose the election in 2024, it wouldn't just be something like Afghanistan, which people are already forgetting about, and after all that was Trump who negotiated the withdrawal anyway. It would have to be something far greater magnitude for him to not be re-elected as president, because he's got a very strong advantage as the incumbent. So I think it's unlikely they win in 2024, because of them being somewhat dysfunctional. They've got a lot of healing to do. It's going to be difficult for them to come together even behind a moderate candidate, because the ones who are very keen on Trump will find it difficult to support a moderate Republican. And then if they have a Trump, someone who's very keen on Trump, then the moderates are going to find it difficult to support them. And so they're going to have a great risk of losing votes no matter who they have as their candidate. And then Biden has the sitting incumbent advantage. So I'd be surprised if they win in 2024. And then 2028 is far too far ahead to say at that point they could. Now, some of you are worried about gerrymandering. There's a lot of publicity, but this is actually a very small effect. If you don't know what gerrymandering is, it's this rather weird thing they have in the United States, where in some states, not all of them, but for instance in Texas, then it's the actually governing the legislature of Texas, local state legislature, that actually draw up the districts. And as the population changes, and so you get this redistricting, and there's a new redistricting now, and the increasing population actually mainly favours Democrats. But what they do is they put all the Democrats into one very strange wiggly pattern like that. And they just draw it around all the Democratic districts. And then that means that there's a majority for the Republicans in the other one. So they make a new, so it seems counterintuitive that adding a new district that will have pretty certain to vote Democrat, but then it gives them two new Republican seats from districts that were previously Democrat. So that's how they do it. They add one new seat that's Democrat, and then that gives them two seats that flip from Democrat to Republican. So in the end up having an extra Republican candidate, even though they added a Democrat seat. So you can add, so each state that's doing gerrymandering could add one extra district that's Democrat, that's Republican, by this process of making a new Democrat thing that peels away Republican votes, peels away the Democrat votes from borderline districts. So it's not really it's not a huge difference. You're only doing one thing at a time, and the total effect is a maximum of 8 seats they might be able to gain by gerrymandering, because many of the states also prohibit gerrymandering already. So it's not a very big effect, but since there's only a majority of 8 already, a shift between 0 and 8 seats that could be gained by gerrymandering, and the estimate is 3.5. So it's more likely something like 4, not 8. And the Democrats have a majority of 8. So a shift of 4, with everything else the same, could give the Republicans the majority. If you got a majority of 8 and then 4 of those switch to Republican, then they could get a majority. So 2022. So gerrymandering could be part of the reason for flipping the House in 2022 if it's very close, and the same in 2024 if it's very close. Gerrymandering is nothing new. It's been going on for a long time. The Democrats do it too. There is some talk about outlawing gerrymandering, about saying that it's just saying it's not legal anymore. Whether that comes to anything, I don't know. Has been some move to try to do that. Short of that, then gerrymandering would possibly mean that you get a higher chance of the Democrats gaining the House in 2022. And then the voter suppression laws, then that's limited by the judiciary and by moderate democracy respecting Republicans. So there's only certain so far you can go before the legislature, even if it's a Republican-dominated legislature in a state. But there's some things that are kind of a bit grey areas, and then there are other things that are just going too far, and that most Republicans just won't accept them because it's just going too far. And then if perhaps even the Republicans do accept them, then some that go too far, then they'll be struck down by the Supreme Court. So there's also some limit for voter suppression laws. So both of those, they could have an effect, but it's not as huge as the press make it out to be. It could indeed contribute to the Democrats losing their majority. It would be no surprise at all. It's very common anyway for the sitting president to lose the House in the midterms. So that would be no big deal anyway, and that's why they're so keen on achieving their agenda in the first 2 years. And that's the same for any president. this kind of honeymoon period in the first 2 years, and if they've got both houses like the Democrats do, then they try to push through as much legislation as they can in the first 2 years, and then in the second 2 years they keep doing what they can, as much as they can with bipartisan things, and with executive orders and so on, and that's likely what will happen with the Democrats too. But it's possible that they retain the House in 20. If you go and look at the actual individual, if you look at the numbers involved, then it is possible that they retain the House in 2022. Because then the Senate as well, then there are only a few. It's only a third of the Senate that's up for grabs in 2022, and if you go and look at it, there aren't actually very many borderline senators there. It's not at all clear that the Republicans will have the advantage in 2022, and that the Senate will flip. The Democrats probably have the better chance of the Senate in 2022, of retaining the Senate, and they might even gain a seat there. But in the House, then they have a significant risk of losing the House. But I think it'll depend a lot on how well Biden does in the next couple of years. So, but anyway, none of that is anything to worry about. That's just normal politics, and just absolutely normal in the United States. And so there's really nothing here to worry about. It's just normal politics. There's no way that Trump is going to be elected in 2024, and there's no way that you're going to get some kind of stop the steal thing in 2022 either. That's absolutely no way that could happen. Well, I mean, that'd be very different. Sorry, what I was saying then. 2022. There's no way that the voter suppression, I don't mean stop the steal, I mean voter suppression and gerrymandering, there's no way that that's going to suddenly cause a huge shift in 2022. It's just a few seats, if it does have any effect. And there is a possibility that this might lead to the United States ending gerrymandering and introducing new legislation to prevent voter suppression. That's it's like it's pushed so much in that direction, because I mean neither side's been especially keen on ending gerrymandering, but it might be that the Democrats it's gone far enough that they have a real push to try and do something about it, and maybe there'll be some bipartisan support. It's not impossible that it has some kind of counter-reaction and everything that's going on, but we'll just have to see. Anyway, so that's all I want to say.